What if a policy of honesty and no surprises was one of the most powerful things that you could offer in your organization? I'm Caroline Poland, a public speaker, mental health counselor, and the founder and CEO of Poland and Associates Consulting. And today we're going to talk about another characteristic of trauma-informed workplaces, trust and transparency. If you've missed the other videos in this series, make sure that you click on that playlist and you can watch them all there. All right, so in part one, we talked about what trust and transparency was, what that looks like in an organization, and why that's important. In part two, we're going to talk all about how to implement this principle of trauma-informed workplaces and educational settings. So, how do we implement this? For transparency, I want you to think short and clear and predictable. For trust, I want you to think about safety and earning it and respect for all of the team's members. Here's a list of examples of what trust and transparency might look like in a workplace. We're going to try as best as we can to not have surprises for high stakes matters. We're going to try to proactively communicate in a way that doesn't surprise people, or at least minimize the surprises that people have, and give time before someone needs to respond. We're going to try to be as consistent and predictable as we can be with policies, with implementing the policies, with following through on the policies, and with our behavior in general. We're going to explain the why of something before we enforce it. Writing out a clear decision memo helps to make sure that everyone has something in writing that they can process, because some people prefer to read something versus hearing something. Everyone processes information differently, and we want to make sure to meet all of the needs of our team. I talked about this in the first video, practicing appropriate repair when harm or hurt happens. We want to acknowledge the impact of something even when the intent is positive. We want to create different routes for feedback. Some people enjoy giving verbal feedback, but some people would rather do it anonymously or in writing, and having different routes for feedback allows for all of the team's members to give information to those at the top of the organization and allows for transparency on both ends. And then we want to establish rules and expectations for positions and seek clarity on whether these rules and expectations were understood. Seeking clarity is incredibly important in the trust and transparency process within organizations. We can't just assume that people understand or know what we're talking about, or understand all of the implications of something. We need to really seek understanding for all of our team's members and make sure that we answer any questions or work to clarify any questions that they might have, and ask for concerns that they have and try to mitigate those concerns as best as we can. It's really easy for organizations to make a decision from the top down, and when I say jump, you jump. And at one level, that is how organizations are, and we understand that we are signing up for some level of that. But when we're seeking health for not only our team's individual members, but organizational culture as a whole, then we begin to understand that there is a better way, and that softer skills actually are really important in supporting the success and productivity of individuals and our organization as a whole. So, what are other things that we can think about when we're talking about implementing trust? We can, again, be willing to admit when we don't know something. We don't know everything. And being willing to say, I don't know, but I'm going to look it up, is incredibly important. We can provide support and consistency to others so that they can do their job. We can maintain appropriate privacy and or confidentiality depending on what your job is and what is required of your job. We can communicate respect for the life experiences of other people and hold respectful and appropriate boundaries. One of the questions with boundaries that I really enjoy asking is, what is mine to do? Because sometimes frustration occurs in relationships where someone else is trying to take control of the responsibilities of another person, their thoughts, their feelings, their actions, reactions, their job responsibilities. And frustration can occur when someone is not taking appropriate responsibility of their property and trying to push that off on other people. And one of the best ways that we can build trust in a relationship of any kind, including that in workplaces, is to respect somebody else's property and also require that they take responsibility for their own property. And boundaries are a really wonderful way to do that. So these are some ways that we can continue to build healthy trust into the fabric of our organization. And remember, with organizational culture, so much is built from the top down. And so when our top leaders are invested in this process, it begins to infiltrate every level and into every person. And that benefits everyone involved. So now let's look at transparency and some other ways that we can start to build that into our organization as well. With transparency, we can share appropriate program information. The more that we can share, the better. There's obviously going to be some of the whys and hows of things that we can't share, but the more transparent that we can be, the better. When we try to sequester information that other people are owed or would be appropriate for them to hear, that starts to breed mistrust in organizations. And sometimes that's something that organizations or top leaders can fall prey to, where they sequester information from some of their other maybe mid-level managers and keep information from them that allows them to productively do their job. And that's inappropriate in a workplace, and it certainly doesn't breed trust and transparency. So we want to make sure that we are giving as much information as we can as appropriate in situations and not working to sequester information from other people. We also want to time messages appropriately for the needs of those in the office, understanding that some people do need more time to digest information and people need information given in multiple routes, both audibly and in writing. We want to address who sees what information and why, and have a good why behind all of our decisions. And I want to mention here that organizational values, as well as personal values as leaders or employees, help to guide that process because our values are our true north and they help to inform our why. And so when we can have a good why behind what we're doing and what expectations we're sharing and who we're sharing with, and those align with our values, then we're keeping ourselves pointed in the true north, or our organization towards our true north. And that helps, again, to support organizational health and culture as well as individual well-being. Another example of transparency in the workplace is expectations around timelines for things, updates for decisions that are being made, or implementation of a new policy or procedure or technological infrastructure. And then finally, we're going to be very transparent about retaliation protections. And this one is really important because when someone is reporting harassment or discrimination, the risk for retaliation is certainly concerning to people. And so we want to be very clear about the policies and the procedures that someone can expect when they're going through an investigation process. And people need to be very clear about the policies and procedures around retaliation, both so that someone who has done the reporting understands the protections that they should expect, as well as for the person who's maybe had a report made against them to understand what they can and can't say and do. And again, that just keeps everything flowing appropriately in an organization as a whole. So what we've talked about today has addressed at a surface level trust and transparency in a workplace. But remember, these principles of trauma-informed workplaces build on each other, and they're not one-time conversations or one-time decisions. These are dynamic organizations and moving beings, so to speak, that impact one another. And the more that we can implement these soft skills and the more that we can implement principles of trauma-informed care, the more success and productivity your organization is going to have. And so instead of just focusing on kind of the dry and concrete and metrics, when we focus on the story underneath the story and we address the humanity of someone else and we make policies and procedures that address that, the healthier and happier everyone is, the more employees are, high-performing employees are retained, and the more success and productivity everybody has. And I think we can all agree that that's what we want for our organizations as a whole. So again, I'm Caroline Poland, and I speak to organizations and businesses around mental health in the workplace, burnout in the workplace, and trauma-informed workplaces and educational settings. If you're interested in having me speak to your business or organization, you can go to my website and fill out a form there, and we will connect. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Poland and Associates, and I have a Substack where I talk about health and well-being at the workplace, and that is conversationswithcaroline.substack.com, and I have linked that below for you. Make sure that you subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and come back for future videos.